We are here for a session of the supervisors of the checklist regarding a challenge to a voter. I want to advise everyone that there is a recording taking place, and more than one apparently. And I want to introduce people so everybody knows who's here. I'm Connie Moses. I'm the chair of the supervisors. Irene LaChance is the supervisor, and Mary Vallone. We have present Kate Miller from DTC Lawyers in Exeter. That is Donahue Tucker and Sheehan Dalla.
Very good, yes.
And Barbara Eisinger, who is our challenge voter. And Mr. Joe Warnick is not here. All right. He was the challenger. And various people in the audience, including a couple of reporters.
Do you know what the recordings are for? Is this a town recording? Or?
You can ask Mr. Lambert.
Hi.
Mr. Murphy.
I'm sorry.
Is this a town recording?
No, it is not.
Okay, so who's doing the recording? I'm just
just
a question.
I run a political blog site by the name of granitegrok.com. We do a lot of citizen journalism, so the entire proceedings will be posted on the internet after I process that video.
Great. And is there a second recording that's happening?
There is a recording being made by the town.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. I want to make sure everybody has their cell phones turned off and that you can hear me. Okay. I need to ask the question if anyone here has any regular business with the supervisors, because this is a session to approve and remove as it was posted. Just make sure there's none of that needs, or to register. Nobody's here to do that. All right, fine. Seems like there's a lot of interest in what the supervisors do all of a sudden. I want to point out that I do have made some handouts of the RSAs, which are on the end of the table here, and there's also a book that has the RSAs in them, so anybody can take those handouts that would like to. We'll be referring to some of them along the way. All right, this meeting is officially in session. I'd like to give you a little bit of a history for anybody who's not familiar. There was a challenge to a voter which was presented to the supervisors of the checklist. The challenge was dated February 27th and it was submitted by Mr. Joe Warnick. What the supervisors did at that point by law was, after receiving the challenge, we reviewed it in our next regularly scheduled session. And we reviewed it to consider if it was a valid challenge, which raised some doubts. And the challenge was regarding the domicile of the challenge voter. And the supervisors did decide that it did put the domicile issue in question. At that point, the supervisors are to, by law, send to the challenge voter what's called a 30-day notice letter, which gives the challenge voter the opportunity to respond after 30 days. So she was having a minimum of at least 30 days to respond. And this letter also gave her the date of the session when we would be reconvening to consider her response to this challenge. She did receive that. At this point, we have received a partial response by email, and today Ms. Eisinger, am I saying it right?
Actually, that's
How do you
correct.
pronounce it?
Well, I have the American pronunciation, which is Eichinger, but actually Eisinger is the German pronunciation.
Well, how do you prefer?
Eichinger is fine. I married it, so.
Eichinger, I'll try to remember. Okay. Due to the unusual nature of this situation, we have decided that we would allow some comment from observers in the audience at the point that I asked for it. Anyone can speak to this if they like. We would give like 15 minutes altogether for all the people that wanted to talk, so if everybody wants to say something, we'll divide up that time. And after we have received, after that point, then, well, actually before that point, we will let Ms. Eisinger, I believe you have, Eichinger, you have a statement that you would like to make?
I have a significant amount of documentation to
Okay.
present.
You have like an oral statement for us?
Yes,
or?
and a written statement.
Okay, all right, perfect. We'll let her make, if this is all right with you, we'll make like an oral statement first, so then the audience has a chance to know both sides of the story, and then they could comment just in general. And after that point, then the supervisors would deliberate between ourselves, which have not had the opportunity to do
Okay.
to this point.
That's fine. What I had planned to do was to go through Mr. Wernig's information first.
That's fine, whatever, however kind of statement you want to make.
Okay.
If you're going to go through that, then I won't have to review
I was
it.
going to go through that,
Right.
at least this was, if it's okay with you. I was going to go through Mr. Wernig's information first.
All right,
I was then going to present some non-public information. People can stay, I'll just show it to you. These are I have extensive credit card records showing where I physically
Can I ask you a
am.
question
Yeah.
here? With regard to the documentation that you've brought, the statute is, as Connie's mentioned, is pretty open-ended. You know, it doesn't say, you know, the following information, you know,
Correct.
is the kind of thing that you need to provide or that they need to request. But are you planning on providing copies to? the
Yes, I have some
supervisors?
copies to provide,
Okay,
yes.
because I would say that anything that you want them to consider, it would be good to provide them with copies of it, both
Yes.
so that they have it and can, you know, actually look at it in, you know, their deliberations, and also so there's a record, you know, for your sake as well as for their sake as to what you asked them to.
Yes, some information can be entered into the public record, and I can give them that. And some information I can give them, which are my personal credit card records, which they can have and review.
Can you redact it? I mean, obviously we don't want social security numbers and birthdays.
Some of it is
Account
redacted,
numbers
okay?
and stuff.
But the credit card information obviously contains a lot of personal information, my buying habits, where I buy,
Mhm.
you know, and so I have that. They can look at it as long as they like.
But they won't.
Okay.
You won't be giving copies.
That is correct.
That's fine. I mean, it's a bit of an odd situation because they won't actually have the document.
Correct, but they will have
Okay.
sufficient other documents.
I understand that, but in terms of, you know, what is your response?
Yes.
The not having copies of some of the material makes it a little, not that I'm asking you to give credit card records, I'm not, but should you wish them to consider documents, having the copies is very helpful to be able to create a record.
I understand.
and we can together redact them
Right.
before they go into any public record.
Correct. So there, any information that you don't want to have public, you do not need to provide so that there's no infringement of your privacy.
I understand.
Good.
Okay, so with that, I'd like to go through the information that Mr. Wernig did provide. In his letter, he says, are to look at the following to determine one's domicile: where a person owns or rents property in which he or she sleeps more than any other place during the year. Mrs. Eichinger does own property in Guilford, 2 of them residents, currently offered for rent, and according to the listing available now. And then he shows listings from some a rental website. I do own 2 homes on Governor's Island. One is my domicile, and one is a property that's just recently been completed, and it is for rent. Now, my domicile, I have rented that in the past for a short number of weeks. Okay, in 2008 it was not rented. In 2009 it was rented for 2 weeks. In 2010 it was not rented. In 2011 it was rented for 7 weeks, and of course all taxes are paid on that, and the rental people handle that and pay all the, the meals and rooms tax. Now, it is not unusual for people who have more than one home, and especially it's not unusual on the water for people to rent their domicile. It helps pay for the taxes. You do a short weekly rental, and it's extremely common. On Lake Winnipesaukee, you have thousands of properties that are rented a few weeks at a time during the summer to pay the taxes by voters. It is not at all unusual. Okay, so his next point is where he or she conducts other business with the government in correspondence with other towns, along with her lawsuit with Guilford, and according to the Guilford tax cards, her address is listed as 36 Old English Road, Bedford, New Hampshire. That is my mailing address. As we were with Mr. Scanlon last week, he explained that a mailing address is different from a legal address. It's very common, and it's done often, and it doesn't affect a person's domicile. My husband and I own a corporation. This is an S corporation. Those of you who understand the rules of S corporations know that any profits of the corporation fall to the owners as income. That is also the mailing address of the corporation, Future Plus Systems Corporation, which is a registered corporation here in the state of New Hampshire. Mr. Eichinger is our company president and our chief financial officer. He handles all of the personal finances in addition to the company finances. Hence, it's very easy for that to happen if everything is mailed directly to him. In addition, on Governor's Island, I had my mail stolen during the 2010 lawsuit. Somebody took my mail, took every page of a legal filing, and sprinkled it all around the island, page by page. Okay, Governor's Island is, in the wintertime and in the fall and in the spring, there are not a lot of people there. It can be accessed both by boat and by one bridge access. It's somewhat remote, so things get stolen out of people's mailboxes. Therefore, after having my mail stolen, I didn't have anything sent there. However, I would tell you that I do have mail sent to me at 558 Edgewater Drive, and you can pass that around. The mail is not forwarded from that address. I do receive a lot of mail at 558 Edgewater Drive. In addition, I like to conduct my business in the cloud. I have a bachelor's and master's degree in electrical engineering, so I try not to get snail mail, as we call it, anywhere, not even at 36 Old English Road in Bedford. So it's perfectly legal to have a mailing address that is different than a legal address. So Mr. Wernig's concern here is either made out of ignorance or malice. I don't understand which one. The third item he has here is where he or she sends children to school. Mrs. Eichinger's child attends school in Bedford, New Hampshire. That is absolutely correct. I have 3 children. 2 of them are residents here in Guilford and are registered voters here in Guilford. Julie is a teenage girl raised in Bedford. One of the things that's most important to teenage girls more than anything, second only to their phone, is where their friends are. Julie wanted to attend school in Bedford with her friends, so that is where she attends school. Julie and Ed are often here in Guilford with me, and Daniel and Lindsay. So it's not like we go there, they come to us. We have the much nicer house. A lot more fun up here on the lake than it is in Bedford. Julie had to attend school somewhere. As I have mentioned previously, I work at Future Plus Systems and I travel quite a bit. So it made more sense for her to live with the parent that doesn't travel the way I do. I travel extensively. And search of the internet, Future Plus Systems, Barb Eichinger, you can see all of the technical papers that I deliver for my work. So there is a perfectly reasonable legal explanation as to why Julie attends school School in Bedford. The last item here that Mr. Wernick puts in his complaint is where he or she tells the United States Postal Service to deliver mail that must be signed for in person. Again, her mailing address is listed as 36 Old English Road. Not only on the Guilford tax card, but political contributions and her website, nhpropertyrights.com. Again, the tax bills are mailed to my mailing address. The property is jointly owned by Mr. Eichinger and myself. It's perfectly legal. Many Guilford voters have their mailing address outside of Guilford. If you look at the checklist, you know that. You have the checklist. You'll see probably over 100 registered voters in the town of Guilford have a mailing address that is not Guilford. Mr. Wernick could have easily checked that himself, but he did not. It's perfectly legal. Political contributions. When I show you my credit card, I will show you that the billing address for the credit card is the address they use. You have to list your billing address, which is my mailing address. So that's where the political, that's why it lists Bedford. It's the made with my credit card, and I can show you that when I show you my credit card records. nhpropertyrights.com, again, is paid for with my credit card. Mox Dog Hosting and Design did the website design. Here are the invoices that you can look at. I'm going to be taking these back because they have personal information on them. But you will see that it is billed to me in Guilford, New Hampshire. Those are the original invoices. Those are not copies. The credit card used to pay for the website is in Bedford, although the invoices came to me addressed to Guilford. Okay, so then the last thing he produces here is an article from the Union Leader concerning Guilford summer residences tax rate out of control. I stand by that statement. You will notice that the Union Leader correspondent lists me as a resident. Now, in Guilford and in the Lakes region, we have many people that are here only in the summertime. It is a generalized statement. When you say somebody is a part-time resident, or they're not a full-time resident, or they have a home elsewhere, they might be referred to as a summer resident. It's a part of the lexicon. Okay? The only mistake that this individual made was that he said, I live in Bedford. He says, I work in Bedford, and Future Plus Systems is in Bedford. But he does correctly state that I am a resident. And as we spoke with Mr. Scanlon last week, Mr. Scanlon pointed out that, yes, indeed, we have many people that are here, legal voters that are not here all the time. In fact, as long as they are here more than they are at any other place, they can claim their domicile in New Hampshire or in the particular town where their domicile is. So that is a response to that. Now, he does also include some letters that I respond to from voluntary lot merging that I sent to the town of Bedford. Nowhere in those letters do I ever say that I reside in Bedford. I say that I am a property owner in Bedford. The letters list the mailing address of nhpropertyrights.com, and you can see those invoices are sent to me in Guilford. Now, you might ask, why did I respond to the Bedford Planning Board? With that, I would give you some other information here. This you may keep. I became a property rights activist as a result of Sutton v. Eichinger, Guilford, and Governor's Island Club. I was contacted by the Carter family in Bedford because Dorothea Carter was a property owner in Bedford. They had found my website. So here is some testimony that I give for my SB 406 2010. This is the testimony I gave in front of the House and Senate in 2011, and I list the story of Dorothea Carter. So the issue with Dorothea Carter, the family contacted me after finding my website. Dorothea was one of our senior citizens. She owned and paid taxes on 2 separate lots for 42 years. Her family needed to sell that property in order to provide for her medical care, and the town of Bedford refused to let her sell that property as 2 individual lots, even though she had a buyer for each one. This was a case that I took very personally. I felt that the town of Bedford was being very unfair to Dorothea, and this was after the 2010 law had been passed banning involuntary lot merging, especially since the Carter family had paid taxes on those 2 lots as 2 individual lots. So she was basically trying to sell them for which they were being taxed as, which is 2 individual lots. So needless to say, I became extremely upset with the town of Bedford. I wrote a letter. I appeared at the one planning board meeting and argued in defense of Dorothea Carter. I was successful in convincing the Bedford Planning Board to follow the lead of Guilford, New Hampshire, to create a zoning ordinance that would allow Dorothea her property rights back. Unfortunately, Mrs. Carter passed away prior to her being able to receive the sale of her properties as 2 separate lots. It was they had to sell the lots together at a significant loss. Okay, so that is the reason why I wrote those letters to the town of Bedford Planning Board, and of course nowhere in them do I claim to be a resident of Bedford. Now he also includes a letter to the Wyndham Planning Board. And this was the same situation. Mr. Roberts was the owner of 4 lots that were involuntarily merged on Cobbitts Pond Road in Wyndham. The address there is the address of nhpropertyrights.com, which is my mailing address, just in case they wish to respond to me. Again, I was somewhat successful in convincing Wyndham to restore some of Mr. Roberts' property rights. And, you know, this is basically how I spend my spare time, which is helping some of our senior citizens regain their property rights. I'm not an attorney. I do not get paid for any of this. It's just that I felt it was extremely unfair. And so that is why I did that, and it's very ironic that Mr. Wernig would try to use that information against me. So that ends Mr. Wernig's information that he uses to challenge my residency. So now I'd like to go through some of my credit card records. And then I have some more public information. And I also have my United States passport with my address written inside of it. These are my Lowe's credit card records. I got this credit card, let's see, last June. This credit card is in my name and my name only.
Can I ask you a question? Connie?
Yes.
I don't see the passport, but you mentioned your name, your address is written in.
Yes.
Can you explain why it's written in? Is it usually
You
printed
could see,
in?
you could see.
It's written in pencil on a page where the passports
Right.
are for you to do that in case
Okay.
it's lost.
Because they don't, I haven't looked at
It's
the
not
passport in a
printed
while.
on the
It's not
passport.
printed on the passport.
Well, they never print any address on the passports.
Okay.
Right.
Crop TV.